discussing Daryl Morey and the front office based on a ranking by a national media member. We'll get into it all here on the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Rothman Orthopedics. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY. Along with Kyle Newbeck, I'm Devon Givens. Ethan sitting in for Bree.
Devon, the bubble man himself. Put him in plastic wrap, put him in a whatever. Get this man out of quarantine, please.
Do I at least sound better? Maybe do I sound better over?
You look good. You look good. You sound good. So we gotta bust you loose, man. This is
all right.
It's getting intense.
Well, maybe we'll bust it loose on next week on Monday, leading into our film session on Tuesday. Maybe we'll do all that, get all this stuff out of my system over the weekend. I've had a long runway here. And then we're all good to go starting next week on Monday.
They're saying it's the longest ramp they've ever seen.
Hey, well, it's a ramp we needed and a ramp we have done here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. Derek, with the day off once again, see him back next week, hopefully, and he's all good to go. And then we can get right to it with our film session. And we thank everybody for hanging out with us as always on the PHLY Sixers podcast. President of Basketball Operations Bree. Well-deserved day off. We'll get back with her next week as well. So it's us here as we just sat down with Daryl Morey, Kyle, in Las Vegas while we were out there for Summer League. And as we sat down there with them and discussed a number of topics with him for our conversation, which everybody, if you haven't seen, you can check it out on our YouTube page. And, of course, underneath our Sixers page as well. Go for it. Go check it out after this show. But right now, let's talk about it, Kyle, because CBS's Sam Quinn, who does a lot of work around the NBA, and he had the Sixers somewhere in the mix that I think you believe, and I believe as well, that would have some conversations maybe discussing among Sixer fans about how they feel about Daryl Morey, where Sam Quinn has him ranked in his ranking that he put together for all 30 teams in the NBA. He had him at 9th based on what he has done with the hitting on the draft with Maxey, McCain, the second-round picks, and even included Justin Edwards in that story about what he has done, stealing and fleecing Quentin Grimes at the trade deadline from Nico Harrison and the Dallas Mavericks. And he gave him a pretty favorable grade there at number 9 overall. And it was another thing that you guys sent in our group chat yesterday to bother Vince a little bit about number 2 on that particular one when it came to drafting with
We'll
Daryl
get to that
Morey.
one later. We got to deal with the first because people will get real mad about that one.
They'll get that one. But number 9, though, was it fair or unfair of his ranking around the rest of the NBA teams and their front offices?
Well, so Ethan in the producer's chair today, I believe, made a graphic that we can throw up on the screen. There we go. So the top 10 in order: OKC, no-brainer. The Celtics, obviously. The Spurs, I want to circle back on later. But then Houston, Cleveland, the Knicks, the Pacers, the Jazz, which I have thoughts on that one as well. The Sixers at 9 and the Grizzlies at 10. Right? And so I think some of it is just simply like the top 2 are, I think, in a tier by themselves if you're asking me to rank them based on recent stuff, right? Certainly the last 2 title winners, so they have proven capable of building title teams. That's probably the most important thing you could do as an executive. But I think what's been so impressive about OKC, for example, is that they did win the title, but they also have a long runway, at least as long of a runway as you can have in the modern NBA with the salary cap and all the other things going on. They have young players. They have guys that are good role players on sustainable contracts. And Boston has not done it quite the same way, but Brad Stevens, since moving from the coach's chair to the executive office, has done a really good job of, even when he's had guys that are, beloved veterans. I would say Marcus Smart is the best example of this, right? Marcus Smart is a guy who was loved in Boston, who was a long-term, big-time contributor to those teams. And he got out of the Marcus Smart business at basically the exact right time, right? Sold on him before injuries really started to pile up. We talked about a little bit with him the other day that if he's healthy, very good player, but he's just never healthy. And so being in the head chair and being an elite executive is about drafting, is about free agency, is about trades. It's a lot through all those things about timing, right? And timing can be luck, right? Like sometimes you just get a high pick in a bad draft or a weaker class, and so you're not able to do a whole lot. But you have to strike while the iron is hot, while the opportunities are there. And so you look at the list, and I think 9 or 10 or somewhere in that range is probably fair-ish for Morey. I think there are a couple teams immediately after them in this list, like the Minnesota Timberwolves, for example. I think Tim Connolly does a really good job there, deserves credit for what he does. The Clippers at 12, which we'll see what happens with this old man squad this year, Tavon, and if they have enough icy hot in the world to get through this season. Miami at 13 historically has had success. The big thing driving this ranking is the drafting, right? And I think on the one hand, there will be people, and I already saw a comment or two on this in the chat that say, well, Tyrese Maxey was a no-brainer pick at the pick that they took him. And like our buddy Vince in the office, Devon, tends to devalue that pick for the Sixers. Taking the right player on the board is a really important job, right? One of the biggest things that you come to realize the closer you pay attention is you don't have to hit a home run every time. You just have to not screw up when opportunities are there. So Maxey fits that. Jared McCain, who was well regarded but slid a little bit, he fits that. We talked about Justin Edwards when we said, a Daryl Morey type of player, right? A really highly regarded high school guy, has a down college season. You just say, well, I'm going to believe in the body of work and not necessarily overcorrect on one season. The draft is what is driving this. The draft is what they have been very good at as a staff, Daryl Morey individually, whoever you want to give the credit to. It's the other stuff that I think people are skeptical of, and rightfully so, right? Because the trades he made immediately upon taking the job helped this team out. And the Quentin Grimes trade midseason, Devon, was a very good one given what they were getting out of Caleb Martin and what Quentin Grimes showed. But not a lot to show for the trades otherwise. Not a lot to show from free agency. And I think the big thing that most people are focused on is you essentially sold out a season, punted a year in some respects, to get to free agency, to sign Paul George to a massive max contract, and you extend Joel Embiid in conjunction with that. And right now, those look like two of the worst deals, like least tradable deals in the NBA. So, I like, where do you fall right now on the Sixers front office, Devon? Like, how much more important do you think the draft or the other side of it is? Like, ultimately, do you think this is a deserved ranking, or do you think you'd bump them down a little bit?
Peeking at some of the comments, they are funny to your point of not giving them credit for the draft, because my thing is always, if you do draft the wrong one, they're going to let you know about it. If you pass on Tyrese Maxey and he pops in Miami or Minnesota or Memphis, you're going to be told about it. And so when he takes him, you can't go the other way and say, well, even he couldn't mess that up because 20 teams before him did mess it up by not taking him in their spots. They have good players, Anthony Edwards, of course, all those guys. But beyond that, you know what I mean. I'll even go back to the 2016 draft, Kyle, where the Sixers had 2 picks on the back end after making the selection with Simmons at number 1. The one we always bring up is the 2 that they had, Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot and Furkan Korkmaz. And while Korkmaz may have been a fun name, and it was good to see him go off in the summer league and maybe have those moments during the regular season, hit the shot against Portland, win the game on the road in the corner, all those things. People like him here. But maybe they would have liked Pascal Siakam a little bit better, who was picked right behind both of them at that 27 spot. So it's not, again, how could you miss out? It's making the right selection at that point. So to your question, I'll even go back to last summer where we discussed this yesterday. The Dalton Connect versus Jared McCain, while we're sitting there and the Sixers are on the clock, we're calling for Connect. And while it is still early, they didn't get it wrong. They might have gotten it right with either one of them, but they didn't get it wrong based on what we saw from Jared McCain in that short time as well. So right now, I think we're looking at that list, and we will get to the ones. I'll hold off to your point of I have some thoughts on the Jazz and maybe the Spurs on this ranking. They probably fall right where they're supposed to, because if we were to move back, let's say either one of those two, maybe you do move up Minnesota or someone else, Miami, just because of it. So landing right there in that 9 spot is fair enough because the draft is part of it. We praised him last summer for the job that he did in getting Paul George, Caleb Martin, got Gershon Yabusele, so on and so forth, of putting together that team last summer that we thought were going to compete in the Eastern Conference until the injuries happened and knocked them down. That includes Jared McCain, Adem Bona, and the undrafted signing of Justin Edwards. So I would say it's probably right where it's supposed to be on this particular list, with some shuffling of a few teams before and after of where it belongs. And I have been critical of Daryl Morey with some things, and it's not just the drafting or the free agent signings or even the trades, because he was very good at that with the Danny Green part of it, getting rid of Al Horford, all of that early on to create the necessary space to do what was right. It also goes with the messaging. He's in charge of that too. And some things that we've got on him about some of the messaging that has happened with the team and the delivery of what they put out there for the fan base, for the media to see and hear about this team. So I do think it's fair. He's had his fair share of really good things, and he's had his fair share of things that we have been critical of him, fairly critical, I think, on the show and amongst our conversation around the office as well with how we discuss Daryl Morey. So I would say it's right about where it needs to be in that spot, with, of course, some movement that he can move up based on how things go. He needs the Embiid and the George signings to pay dividends somehow, some way, after giving them those long-term contracts, which at least George was right at the time. You could argue the Embiid part of it because of the health coming off the Team USA run. Should they have waited? Was it the right thing to do? You've talked about it yourself of, was Paul George going to do that if Embiid wasn't signed there long-term? All of that stuff. So,
and that goes Daryl's kind of publicly,
right,
whenever it comes up. He always says, like, Paul was not coming here if there wasn't some sort of understanding that he's going to be playing with Joel for a long time, which I don't think that gets me there. Right. I think Joel was still going to be there at least a couple of years. Right. So I think it's his not answer. A good enough explanation, but that has been the answer publicly.
Right. So that has been part of it with that. And I say all that to say that when you come down to it, man, we can go into each city, and each city is going to have something to complain about their general manager about. It's just how the nature of sports go. Before Howie Roseman became this Hall of Famer, we talked about this like 2-3 weeks ago. He was one that people were like, get this dude out of here because of the Justin Jefferson, Jalen Reagor move, right? On a move like that, or myself included. Why are you taking Jalen Hurts after giving this franchise contract to Carson Wentz, or this player or that player, or why you moved this player and didn't keep this player and all of that? Yet here we are where we look at Howie Roseman and we talk about him in a totally different light. Now, winning 2 Super Bowls helps that. But before those 2 Super Bowls, these were the conversations. Now, Daryl Morey, as far as his fan base goes, he has a lot to do to get to that space. If he wins one, understatement, right? If he gets to one, or even get to an NBA Finals, he might be in the clear in a lot of people. But you're always going to have your detractors. So I still just round it back to, there are a lot of bad general managers, a lot of bad front offices in the NBA. You had Brian Colangelo before that. If you weren't a Sam Hinkie fan when he was here, you had him before that. There are a lot of really, really tough front offices around the NBA. And I think you could do a lot worse than Daryl Morey when it comes to one that's running your front office with Elton Brand, with the others that he's had. And he's had some success, I think, here in the time in Philadelphia. They should have won 2 second-round matchups. Boston.
At least one. The
Atlanta.
One
yes, right. Boston, Atlanta. Are we talking about him a little bit differently if he had pulled off of one of those and gotten to an Eastern Conference Finals against the Atlanta Hawks? Are we talking about him differently if he gets by also the Boston Celtics at that time? Was it him? Was it the players that he put together? Was it the coach? A lot of that stuff comes back into rounding it back into the conversation of Morey in that front office. But, man, we thought they were sure shot Eastern Conference representatives against the Milwaukee Bucks in that year, that, what was that, 21, when we thought that they were going to the pathway was there. He did everything right until they didn't. And that, of course, falls on him. So you could do a lot worse than Daryl Morey. And I think he's done he's done more than a decent enough job as the president of basketball operations for this basketball team. So he's not without blame and not without pointing the finger at, but I think this ranking is right around where he should be.
Here's the interesting thing with Daryl's tenure here, Devon. I think he has done the hard stuff fairly well, right? Like picking from non-premium picks, right? Getting Maxey at 21, getting McCain at 16, getting a lot of value out of their second round picks, right? Now, all these guys didn't end up staying with the team, but when you're drafting Paul Reed, Isaiah Joe, Adem Bona, Justin Edwards as an undrafted guy, like you're getting value from these spots in the draft that, frankly, a lot of teams are just getting zero from, right? And then you think about, you get Kelly Oubre on a minimum late in the offseason. You get Gershon Yabusele late in the offseason on a minimum after he's like the big commodity coming out of the Olympics. And those are good, not just on talent identification, but recruitment, right? Getting guys who Gershon Yabusele coming out of the Olympics has options, right? People saw him play for France and said, oh, this guy has improved a lot. There are a bunch of teams after him. Kelly Oubre, maybe not quite as hot of an item at that point, right? Had worn out his welcome a little bit with his style of play, but was a very talented player at the least. And you convinced him and said, this is the place for me to go. And you get him to stick around on a relatively team-friendly deal. And so these are the types of moves that, in theory, they're what you need if your star talent and the top of the roster stuff is good enough. And generally, it seems easier to identify we have the right star talent, but that has been like it's more of the big money, top of the roster moves that have hurt them. And that for a GM who is like the star hunter, and that's the type of move he always loves, it's such a funny dynamic to watch play out, right? I think a couple more examples. You trade for Seth Curry, right? Josh Richardson for Seth Curry. You're swapping out two like high bench guys, right? But guys who are not starters on real contenders. Right. But you swap out Josh Richardson, who's a brutal fit, for a very good fit in Seth Curry. You get rid of Al Horford, and thankfully they kept the pick this past year based on that trade. But Al Horford gets sent out with all the issues they had there. And you bring back Danny Green, who was the high-level starter for them for the time that he was here, right? And so a lot of those moves are good. The Paul George thing, though, wipes out a lot, right? It's just when you pay a guy $50 million a year in his mid to late 30s, that's a big deal. And frankly, I think the thing that I would hold against Daryl and the front office the most, and this ties into you spend the last year of Tobias Harris's deal in punt mode, right? You're holding on to that contract in many ways because it's allowing you to create that cap space to get to Paul George, right? I think there were probably opportunities, maybe not to get great value for Tobias Harris, but to move Tobias Harris and rearrange
I agree
things
with
in a
you
way,
100%
right?
on
And
that
like
one.
this is
Yes.
the one that
Yes.
I think I hold against him more than signing Paul George, is doing something else with the amount of money that Tobias Harris is making, right? If you split that up into two very good players and you still have at different points, right? It could have been James Harden and Maxey. You have James Harden, Maxey, and a couple decent role players instead of Tobias Harris. What type of difference does that make in a playoff series? It could be none, right? But Tobias, we know what the playoff track record is, right?
Right.
And nobody, whether it's here, whether it was elsewhere, was pining for him to stay in Philadelphia. It was clear that he wasn't doing the things they needed him to do. Daryl did not sign him to that deal, but his active choice was, instead of the alternatives, whatever they were, we're going to ride out this contract until the very end. And I think that more than anything else is the thing that I hold against him, because it was clear for a long time he didn't shoot enough threes. His overlap in terms of his floor spots was pretty heavy with Joel Embiid. He was not a guy that when Joel is out is like, I can just carry the team type of deal, right? So he doesn't really work as like that star level contract. I get that they probably would have had to move him and either attach stuff or get what is perceived as negative value, right? But there had to have been at least a couple of times and opportunities where you could have said, let's die a different way. Let's move him. Let's look at something else at that spot and see what happens. And they never did. And I think it was a huge part of why they just ended up stuck in the place that they were.
All right, that's a great one. So we'll pause there. We'll come back. I'll give you another one that you can either hold against them or maybe not. And two comments from some of our chatters in here that go on different sides that I want to read, Kyle, and we can discuss off of that. We're discussing Daryl Morey and his front office, ranked number 9 on the CBS front office power rankings. Is it too low? Too high? Which one is it for you as a Sixer fan? The job that Daryl Morey and the front office have done. We'll discuss it when we get back on a Friday here. It's getaway day here, right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast.
And guys, believe it or not, back to school season is almost here. Thankfully, I don't necessarily need to worry about it right now, right? And our friends at TrueMark Financial are here to help you. I don't have those kids heading back to class. It's still a great time to take advantage of a lot of seasonal deals, office supplies, tech upgrades, new clothes, right? The back to school clothes. It's one of everybody's, or not everybody's, a lot of people's favorite part of the year. As long as you're not spending the money, you can plan ahead to take advantage of those deals using a TrueMark Financial credit union debit card that earns rewards. Every time you swipe and choose credit on purchases, it could be a new planner, headphones, or just some everyday essentials. You earn points. I earn points. Those points can be redeemed for cash, gift cards, travel, merchandise, and more. I think I've got my eye on a few things, Devon. Maybe some gift cards, maybe some tech upgrades on my own. I'm not quite our guy Derek on all the tech, but I aspire to catch up to him. This is a simple way to get rewarded for buying the things that I already need. So if you're already a TrueMark Financial Credit Union member, be sure to check out your debit card benefits before you hit the stores or start shopping online. If you're not a member yet, it's a great time to join. Just stop by one of TrueMark Financial's 24 branches or visit TrueMark.com to open an account. TrueMark Financial Credit Union, federally insured by the NCUA.
All right, so I walked into my garage yesterday and it felt like a sauna.
I got to tell you, Devon, this Philadelphia heat, especially coming off a cool period, no joke.
All right, so here's what I did. I got like 10 bags of ice and I made myself an ice bath to stay cool instead of turning on the AC.
But why wouldn't you just turn on your air conditioning?
Well, you know, I was trying to be energy efficient. You know, go green, go birds, right? And a little power dribble. Make sure I stay away from it.
Yeah, but, you know, instead of icing yourself out, you could just check out Pico's energy saving rebates. They've got deals on Energy Star cooling equipment that actually work and they cut down your bills.
Hold on. So no more ice?
Unless it's an ice cold beer, Devon, we don't need to talk about ice.
That makes a lot of sense.
So everybody just head to pico.com/ways to save. They've got tips for everything. Heating, cooling, lighting, you name it. Don't resort to ice like my friend Devon over here.
Look at that. It's warm outside. Kyle went with the hoodie again, so
staying nice and cool thanks to my energy saving at Pico, Devon.
It must be Pico. Absolutely. All right. All right. So here's what I wanted to go before I'll throw these at you first, and then I'll get to the other move that could be a strike, maybe not, against Daryl Morey. Theo says every decision looks different with a healthy Embiid. Fair?
Of course. And so there are plenty of people, our boss Vince being one of them, who have just been out on the Joel Embiid experience for a while and have said you should trade him even immediately after he wins MVP because of the issues in the playoffs, the injuries, whatnot. I can't say that I was there up until this last run of, boy, everything has gone wrong for 2 years in a row, right? So I think for the people who have been out on Joel for a while, they view Morey a lot more negatively than I do, because I can't sit here and be like, I'm holding this against you when I wouldn't have moved Joel, right? I believe Joel to be a big enough talent that you had to just kind of wait and see, right? You had to hope at some point he was going to get fortunate with injuries, or they just have the right mix of players around him, whatever it might be. And so I think it'd be, for me personally, I think it'd be hypocritical to say, man, I'm going to kill this guy. I think where I was off the ride and where I was like, was the extension, right? And while I rationalized the extension at the time that it happened, it was one of those where it's like, you didn't have to, right? And they push back on that every time that gets said. But that's where it's like, you have enough evidence at this point, and especially coming off the Olympics, where frankly, he didn't move all that well. He didn't look all that good outside of that matchup with Jokic in the semifinals, where he had a big moment there. But it was just a weird time to give that out, right? So I do think that's correct, right? If Joel is healthy, sure, all this looks better. But also, when you build around Joel Embiid, you can't exactly assume that this guy's going to be healthy. This has been the story with him from the very first day he stepped into the league, in a different way, with foot problems at that time. But it's been one problem after another for his entire career.
All right, so then Money Mar with a different one, different direction. Daryl was the worst thing to happen to this franchise. They should have left well enough alone and given Elton Brand the power he needed. Morey and Rivers came in here and completely squandered Embiid's prime.
So the thing I always find myself in the middle on Elton, right? Because for the people who are like, boy, he really screwed everything up with Tobias and all this stuff, I always like to gently remind them that while Elton was at the top of the masthead, there was a very complicated power struggle going on behind the scenes where it's not necessarily Elton making all those calls, right? And I will remind people that there is good reason that he is still employed by the Sixers after the Al Horford stuff, after Tobias Harris and all the other moves. Like, he is a respected member of the organization. Now, the other side of it is, if you're someone who thinks that, if they just left him in charge, they're better. I mean, maybe, but also we don't really know much about Elton as a lead exec, right? I think he's a smart guy. I think he certainly knows basketball, has been around the game forever, and has forgotten more than either of us will ever know about the sport. But that's also, it's easy to say someone who basically has no track record that's fully theirs would be better than someone who has an extensive track record, right? It's a lot easier to be excited and hopeful about someone who is closer to a blank slate, because you can just project whatever. Oh, he wouldn't have done this. He wouldn't have done that. Like, maybe he wouldn't have, but also maybe he would have. Like, he's been a huge part of this front office over the last 4 years, 5 years or so with Daryl Morey, and Daryl and Elton would both tell you that. Like, Elton, when I've talked about this before, as an example, when they go into a trade deadline, right? A lot of times what has happened is they split up responsibilities in terms of talking to teams. So if there's a list of 15 teams that are like really shopping guys or looking to make deals, maybe Daryl takes 9 of them and Elton takes 6 of them. It depends on who has the better relationships or whatever. And they make those calls and they get the early read on, hey, so-and-so is available, or they might move a first-round pick, or they might do this. And then they all come together with the other members of the front office and make that happen. So I think saying that if you just left Elton here, it'd be dramatically different ignores that he has been a big part of all this, which, for better or for worse.
Look, Elton did. I thought the Jimmy Butler thing, I thought he did that right. He struck right there when he was supposed to. They were having issues in Minnesota. The value was already down a bit. He jumped on it immediately and
tremendous
said,
trade.
I'll take that guy. Trade. Exactly. So that was a great one. But you can question then the move that was, do you go get Tobias Harris? Was it needed? I think a lot of people were excited at the move at the time. It was what happened thereafter when it came to giving him the extension. And that wasn't necessarily on him by himself, to your point. I thought, Kyle, when he brought in as a pivot after Jimmy Butler decided to leave and they knew it already, and the pivot was go get Al Horford and he was still in charge. I didn't mind it though. I know you didn't.
I was not in on that one.
I didn't mind it because of what he was thinking. Of course, the Embiid stuff, the injuries, and all. You got somebody there that can play those minutes if Embiid is out, and one who is smart enough IQ-wise and can shoot threes, do what he does at the 4, still defend well enough where he's not a negative out there on the floor next to Embiid while you still have Simmons and others who are out there. The problem then was, which I don't know how much you really do it. I mean, look, first of all, you didn't have to do a sign and trade with Jimmy Butler. You didn't have to. So if you didn't have to, you don't have to. But they felt like they wanted to get somebody in place. Josh Richardson was the result of that. So he wasn't perfect, Elton Brand. But I was curious to see if they gave him a longer runway, what that might look like. I was curious to see what that might look like and how that would have been put together. I don't know what it would have looked like, but I was interested in finding out. And I know we differ on the Al Horford side of it, but I understood. I thought I understood why he did it. He explained why he did it, why that was the right decision at the time, and I was okay with it. I didn't love it because I preferred Jimmy Butler, but as far as the pivot went, I was cool with it and an understanding of seeing a team that, with the shooting and stuff, how far that got them. Let's try this one too and go in this direction. So he has been around. He's had a voice in the front office. He's still here, and his name comes up in other interviews for other front office jobs. And I'm very interested to see where his career goes, whether staying here in the number 2 spot or eventually getting another shot as a number 1 elsewhere for them. But you never know, because the same thing is said on our what ifs. What if they let Sam Hinkie continue? I have no idea what that would have looked like either, because he wasn't at that time making decisions for the now of it's time to win now. Let's go. I don't know. Would he have taken somebody else over Ben Simmons in the 2016 draft? I don't know. I have no clue. I don't know. So a lot of what ifs, a lot of I don't knows with the rest of the front office of who would have been in there. But I thought two different sides of where the fan base is on Daryl Morey, Elton Brand, Brian Colangelo, if you will, Sam Hinkie, and others, and how it would go. Here's the other one I wanted to throw at you. I'm sorry, go ahead, and then I'll throw the other one because it can actually wait.
Well, I was going to ask you, because I think one of the other defining decisions or decision trees, we would say, of his tenure centers around James Harden, right? It's
So
trading,
that's the one I was going to throw you.
It's
that was
trading for James Harden.
Yep.
But then also, and look, this has been a he said thing for years now, where I think Harden and his camp were basically like, Daryl was going to ultra lowball me, and the Sixers side of it is basically like, never got the chance to even make an offer, right? But before we get to they had come off of the tampering stuff, and so the story is they're being careful, and so they just had not had the conversation, and so it's like, I think probably there's some truth. I don't think Daryl was gonna like super lowball James Harden, right? But that relationship fell apart in spectacular fashion, right?
Yep.
And I'd have look, James Harden, very divisive player for how good he is. But I understood why you go for him, right, over the young guys. You had Joel Embiid playing during that stretch. He was at an MVP level for 3 or 4 straight years, right? And had not won an MVP yet, but was carrying that team with a max contract, sitting in street clothes in his house or apartment or whatever, and Ben Simmons throwing a fit, and they're still winning games and they look like they have a shot. If you can get a guy who is a perennial all-star, all-NBA type player, even with some warts, I completely understand and respected the gamble. The next year when Joel won MVP was, to my eye, was the best team that they had. They may not have been the number 1 seed, but it just worked, right? Like, they had the James Harden and Joel Embiid pick and roll as the engine of the offense. Joel was still great defensively. Maxey as this dynamic young player who benefits from playing next to a James Harden and getting to focus on all the things he's great at instead of, his weaknesses coming up. And end of the day, those two came up very small in Game 7 in Boston and didn't do enough in Game 6. And that's sports, man. The margins are not that big most of the time. If DeAnthony Melton hits a few threes, we look at the James Harden trade and tenure a lot differently, potentially, right? So I would say I would blame Daryl in the front office more for how it ended than I would for thinking, let's go for it. Let's bring in James Harden. Let's not wait on a younger guy. Not that there were tons of young options out there for there to trade for. Let's get a guy in here. That combination was way better than most people expected, because at that point, they were still dealing with the perception of, oh, Joel Embiid can't play in pick and rolls, right? And they said, we don't believe that. Turns out they were right in their assessment of how well those guys can work together. But maybe the thing that they missed, and maybe this is the thing you would ding Daryl for, is that the personality stuff with those guys, when the spotlight is the brightest, when you're deep in a series and you're in must-win games, right? Neither of Joel or James have this track record or reputation as foxhole guy, right? Someone who's going into that huddle and just pulling people out of it. And I give James tremendous credit for the 2 games he won them in that series, including a game that Joel was just terrible in the fourth quarter and overtime. Still managed to pull it out.
Yeah.
But what won out in the end was what a lot of people believe about those two. So if you want to ding him for tying the franchise to those 2 guys, I can understand it, even if I wasn't there at the time.
And that's exactly where I was going to go with you on the James Harden front. So no need for me to ask it. You just gave your thoughts on it all. The funny thing about the pick and roll thing, I remember it was always about Embiid. Could he run in pick and roll? It was never really about Embiid, because you would have those conversations with people. It was always Embiid and Simmons. And that's where it was. And clearly Simmons just wasn't wasn't a pick and roll player. It's not that he can't do it, but he doesn't do the other stuff that helps out.
A little that he can't do it. Certainly not now.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because I remember a coach saying at the time, hey, man, people think this, and this about this pick and roll with Ben and Joel going forward. It's not even Joel. It's the Ben side of things. at that time. All right, we final pause here on the show, and we come back and questions about the future and what that future looks like as far as Morey goes with the ranking 9th overall in the CBS poll. But how long of a runway does he have here for the remainder of his time here in Philadelphia? What does that look like? How does it look like this season with the things that he's done and maybe will do going forward? We'll talk about it as we close out the show on this Friday right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. And I need to tell you about our presenting sponsor, which is Rothman Orthopedics. It's the weekend. Everybody, be cool, stay cool, be safe, don't get banged up. If you injure something, though, I do have the place for you, and that is Rothman Orthopedics. So from aches and pains after those pickup games to the old injury that's nagging and flaring up on your summer adventure, or you just had too good a time this weekend, and man, now I have to go get looked at. Well, Rothman's team of experts, they are the place for you to go to help you, and they're always here with evidence-based care and a commitment to restoring your mobility. They'll get you back out there, and they'll do so stronger than ever. Their top-tier care will have you moving and enjoying every minute of the summer as you continue to do so with whatever time we have left of this great summer. Patients will find the full spectrum of orthopedic care at Rothman Orthopedics, and they proudly serve dozens of communities across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Florida as well, with 30-plus convenient offices, urgent cares, and walk-in centers, and 3 right here in Philadelphia, located in Center City, Northeast Philly, and currently the latest at the Navy Yard in South Philadelphia. So if you need to be looked at, your pain is slowing you down, you need to take that first step, head to rothmanortho.com/PHLY and schedule your appointment today. Rothman Orthopedics, your summer, your mobility, their mission. Also, want to tell you about our good people at Cherry Hill Mitsubishi. Yes, I'm not going to make fun of Bill today. Cherry Hill Mitsubishi. Here's a fact that shocked me. Mitsubishi Motors is #1 in customer satisfaction with dealer services among mainstream brands and SUV owners. That's not me saying it either. That's the J.D. Power. If you're looking for the most affordable 7-passenger SUV in America, CherryHillMitsubishi.com has you covered with the 2025 Mitsubishi Outlander. Take advantage of their 0% for 60 months APR financing for PA residents only, or take home the 2024 Mitsubishi Mirage with payments starting at $55 a week with 0 down on retail. Come on now. Offer not valid with any trade-in. Offer subject to credit approval by third party. Not all applicants may apply. Combine that with the best warranty in the automotive business right now, 10 years, 100,000-mile powertrain with 5 years, 60,000-mile bumper-to-bumper. Why settle for lesser warranty and be on the hook for costly repairs down the road? Don't do that. Stop in today. Tell them PHLY sent you and receive a $100 restaurant.com gift card just for taking the test drive or completing a trade appraisal. I know people buy Mitsubishis elsewhere. Kyle, I just don't know why. Drive home in your Mitsubishi today, just minutes from all bridges, or available online 24/7 at CherryHillMitsubishi.com. Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Rothman Orthopedics. Again, visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY. We do have to tell you about our $36 intro offer that just got underway when training camp did earlier this week. Take advantage and sign up to become a diehard member at allphly.com for the low price of $36 a month. I mean, for the year, that's $3 a month for you. That's the training camp intro offer. Dive in, take advantage of that right now at allphly.com. Get all the great written content right now from the Birds guys, as these Eagles players seem locked in. They're not worried about their ring. Kyle, I don't know how they're going to be on banner raising night, on opening kickoff night on that Thursday, because these guys don't care, man.
They're inside the locker room. They don't even care.
They don't even care. But if you want to read about it all and what their mindset is like going into the 2025 season, Bo, Zach, Fran, and the great Les Bowen have you covered. If you want some Sixers info, you got it right there from Kyle and Derek. Flyers, Charlie O'Connor, Phillies, that's Jim Salisbury, allphly.com, $36 training camp intro offer. Go sign up. And when you do, as a diehard member, you can visit our diehard member only film session for the PHLY Sixers podcast. Next Tuesday, 6 to 8, the 29th, 6 to 8, you get to hang out with us for our very first film session, live from the studio, food, drinks, all of us, Rich Hoffman, hopefully, Vince, Papa Shot, maybe Ethan will be there. We'll all be there. Film session, PHLY Sixers podcast. Die Hard only event. No pressure at all, Ethan. Die Hard only event. I'm sure Chris will be there taking some photos as well. Die Hard only event, live from the studio, July 29th, 6 to 8, PHLY Sixers podcast film session. Maybe we'll run some film of Daryl Morey and how he works. I don't know how that will work, but
I don't know how appealing that would be. But
I don't know. We'll figure it out. That's next Tuesday, 6 to 8, right there in our offices. All right, Kyle, what does it look like for – we got to look at the immediate future. Like you talked about yesterday with Nick Nurse, fair or unfair for year number 3 because of how things have gone in the first 2 years. The seat is warm. And with the seat being warm, that has to be the same for Daryl Morey. Derek said earlier in the week when we're talking about the front office, hey, I at least know or at least feel like he may not get an opportunity to hire another coach if things don't go well for another season here. So what needs to happen this season for all of the things to come together for him outside of winning a championship, which we know would be the ultimate, hey, my man, you got your job, you're good to go. What needs to go right for Daryl Morey this season for not only this is all hypothetical with this ranking, but more so of the fans being happy, satisfied, and him coming back for yet another year next year for Josh Harris?
I think it's very simple, right? I think there are 2 paths for Morey and for Nurse to take some heat off of themselves. One, you get fortunate with health and you win, right? Like you're a high seed in the East. This is going to be a down year when you consider that Boston is very much taking the year off by the looks of things because of the Tatum injury, making those trades. The Pacers, after going to the finals, they are also kind of in that just gap year mode, right? Halliburton will be out. They let Miles Turner go to Milwaukee. So that takes 2 of the teams that are real threats out of the picture. So if you can do damage, even in a weak East, right, and your guys are healthy, Paul George has a bounce back, Joel Embiid has a bounce back, like I think it's that simple, right? I don't know that fans will be happy with him one way or another if they don't at least go to the conference finals or potentially win a title. But if you have another like 50-plus win year, have a chance to make the conference finals, maybe even get to the conference finals, then it's like, okay, that's progress, right? The other thing, if that stuff doesn't happen, right? Joel Embiid's not healthy. Paul George is not healthy. Or even if they're semi-healthy, they're just not good enough. If VJ Edgecombe and Jared McCain are better than expected, or just like very good, very exciting, all that, then you could, as Daryl, go to the front office and say, look, like, we're going to pivot out of this like win now thing. We obviously can't rely on Joel or PG, and that was my mistake. But now we have these 3 potential building blocks of the organization. We can turn the page, new era, right? Like the thing that he's done well is draft, and that's your sales pitch, both to the fan base and to ownership. Now, there's still like if you have a disaster year in terms of wins and losses, I do think there is probably a line where even if VJ is like the best rookie in the class, and even if Jared comes back and is great, you still might not survive. But those are the 2 most obvious ways for him to keep his head above water and for them to get opportunities beyond this year in Philadelphia.
I would agree with that. And it's always how did it happen for me? So let's say they do get to the second round again. I saw Winona point out, get to the second round again, and he might be safe. But I think it's what happens when you're in that second round. If you get to another game 7 and it's really competitive and things happen, officials, calls, or an unfortunate thing where a guy just hits a shot in the closing seconds, like we revisit the Kawhi Leonard thing, or
It's gonna say, are you gonna say his name, or are you just gonna let?
Yeah, well, you can say his name, so it's okay. But if something something like that happens, because we're so conditioned with the second round, maybe that's not enough though for Josh Harris and the ownership group, where all right, we've seen this far too many times. We have to go in another direction.
And I think that's fair. I know the fan base feels that way, right? So if you do get I think if you get a healthy year, like a pretty good year in terms of Joel and PG, and you flame out in the second round again, like even if there is better context, even if it is like, hey, they lost the tight one and it just came down to the wire, like I still think there would be a good case to say you got to do something different, right? You got to try something. Like I would understand,
especially if you can't move the players because of their contract. If you can't move the players, then that means the only other possibility is the coach or the general manager or president of basketball operations, and it goes that way. Maybe that's what it is. And we already during the season had those conversations where there were whispers about Bob Myers because of his relationship with Josh Harris, because of the Washington Commanders thing, and that group that helped put that front office, that coaching staff together in Washington for the football team. And does that start to happen again? Is there something that's real there that revisits because of any kind of disastrous season, even with a playoff loss where it's a disaster and you just can't, you got to get past it. All right, it's time for new change is needed. Let's do it. And that's the case. But that might be the one thing that non-Eastern Conference Finals, NBA Finals appearance is how they, unfortunately, if it happens again, fall in the second round. It has to be really competitive. It has to be something that may have been out of their hands, just the flow of a basketball game where turnovers happen, someone fouls out, that stuff happens, questionable calls, sure, but they were there and they were really, really competitive where we'll all be sitting there that night and that following week saying, man, they were right there once again. And it wasn't because of the non-trade that happened.
About this, like
I know,
less than a year.
I know. And also, what does a trade maybe look like at the trade deadline? Did that trade help? Did that factor into what went down? Did he not make a trade that they should have made, and a player that where they were in conversation with, rumored to maybe look at, and that player goes elsewhere and does make waves in that particular situation and helps them advance in whatever city and franchise that he's with. There's so many factors that go into it of how it could look and what it may look like that I don't know what it's going to look like. But you're two laid out there pretty well. And all I really look at is you got to get to the playoffs first. It's a down year, as you pointed out. And are you good enough once again to get to that second round and maybe take advantage of some less experienced teams that may also be there, like Orlando and maybe like Atlanta, a little payback with them in that matchup where you finally do advance to that Eastern Conference? And how do you fare against New York or Cleveland or someone else that may be in that mix? Detroit, I put them in that last category of less experience, but you face off against them in that second round. How do you fare against them in those spots? And if you lose those, then it's not just going to be the coach. They're going to look at the front office as well, especially if you can't move on from the players because the players have less value in terms of trade.
Well, so a couple quick ones, Devon. Was there anybody near the top of this list, and we flashed the graphic earlier, who you were like, I don't know if I agree with that, where they're ranked relative to some of the other front office?
Yes, I will go back to the Spurs because I think that's a legacy thing because of R.C. Buford being there for so many years with Greg Popovich. They always get, like we always see, how the Ravens, they draft somebody and like, oh, damn, again, they got a Ravens guy again. They'll get Spurs guys not in the top three where you're like, man, they did it again, or they made that move again, and it's the Spurs doing it all over. So I think the Spurs are a little bit more recency. I think it's more of a legacy thing and not a recency thing because Victor Wembanyama, you get number one, that's whatever. You hit on Castle, that's a good pick. And this year, you do it again where you get the number 2 overall pick. So I'll say the Spurs. And I think the Jazz, because Danny Ainge was great with Boston, he hasn't necessarily been great with the Utah Jazz. And has he let the value of Lowry marketing kind of go and the value of Walker Kessler probably go? I don't know.
The Spurs one is really interesting to me because obviously they've been one of the best run organizations in basketball for a long time. But like most of their recent stuff is all, oh, they got lucky in the lottery. Like, dude, it's not like they get credit for, oh, you got number one in the Wemby draft. Like, oh man,
and number two,
really nailed that one.
Harper.
And then you get the number two this year. Now, give him some credit for drafting Steph Castle, right? Like he was a good pick and a tough draft. But like one of the other things now is they're getting credit for having all this talent, and we haven't seen them play at all, right? We have no idea how the Harper, Fox, Castle thing is going to work out. And like individually, right? The Fox trade, I don't love Fox as a fit down there, but they didn't give up a ton to get him. So it's like, okay, I get it. But they've done a lot of just like, all right, they cashed out on some guys. They got good value for DeJounte Murray. They got good value on Jakob Poeltl when they moved him to Toronto in, what was that, 2023? Something like that.
Yep.
But like, you know, Vassell has not become as good as they need him to be. Keldon Johnson really plateaued after they gave him his deal. They had not, they're very much an idea team. And so for them to be 3, and then you look at like, you know, I think Miami is somewhere like 13. Like Miami hasn't done much of anything recently. But if you're giving the Spurs credit for like the legacy stuff, it's like, I don't know how Miami ends up at 13 when they went to finals, right? They got Jimmy Butler and we're a, you know, Eastern Conference finals team for a few years there. And so I get it. You have to be forward looking and like there are tons of discrete moves and trades that you say, yeah, I think they got good value there, but it is a little bit of looking into the past. And yeah, I think I'm 100% with you on the Jazz in the sense that like, what have they done? Right? They've strictly gotten worse. And, you know, getting Markkanen when they did was a good move, but now he's making a ton of money. To your point, his value may have depreciated a lot now that he's on this bigger contract. So I don't know. We'll see. Like if Ace Bailey turns into a star or, you know, Filipowski is as good as he was in Summer League, I would be skeptical of that, but he certainly was dominating there. Who knows? Like they could turn around quickly, but yeah, it's hard to get a read on, and obviously there's paragraphs of detailed explanation for all these. So you guys can read and judge for yourself, but yeah, those are the two that jumped out at me in the top 10 that I raised an eyebrow at least.
A little bit. Quickly, Kyle, before we get to our roll call, I just had 2 fast ones for you on the news and notes. I'll read them out, give you some time, give everybody else time. Speaking of the Jazz, they have reportedly waived Jaden Springer, former Daryl Morey draft pick. And so he's out there on the market right now. And also Shake Milton reportedly headed overseas, signing a 2-year deal with Partizan Belgrade as of right now. So 2 former Sixers out there moving on. Springer available right now to the pool, of course, for the NBA. We'll see what happens with him. Shake Milton headed overseas. Before we get your thoughts and everyone else's, want to let everybody know we're going to quickly hit overtime at allphly.com. So make sure you head over to allphly.com to finish the show off. We thank you on the television side, not just today, but all week. We really appreciate it on the TV side, Fast Channel. Thank you so much. Head over to allphly.com. Kyle, Shake Milton, Jaden Springer, everybody else in the chat, your thoughts.
Yeah, 2 quick thoughts. One, Jaden Springer was not a great pick, obviously, when the Sixers made it, but an example of they moved on because they could get just a little bit of value. The pick they got for him turns into a Dembona, who I think a lot of people are at least optimistic about moving forward. So if you want to talk about executive rankings and whatnot, you move on from mistakes and you try to recapture some value. That was I think a good move there, although certainly you wanted more from the first round pick in the first place. The Shake Milton thing, real quickly. I said this in our Discord yesterday, Devon. It always stunned me, and it still stuns me, that he never became a consistent three-point shooter, because that was his whole thing coming out of SMU. He didn't just post good shooting numbers in college. He was like a 42, 43% guy in college for like 3 consecutive years, right? He was an elite shooter. Year 2 in Philadelphia, which was I believe was the Al Horford year, I think he shot something like 43% from 3. And it looked like, all right, this guy in a Joel Embiid centric environment, he does enough on the ball and is a, knockdown shooter. This guy's going to find a role, whether it's here or elsewhere. And had a couple of good years, but really never found that. And I thought his mechanics at some point were lost. Like he got a little hitchier at the top of the shot, and I don't know what happened there. So that it's just one of those that I don't know what happened. I don't know why he never. Yeah. It just seemed like on paper he was a no doubt. If this guy does nothing else, he's going to shoot. And then he basically just became an on-ball, like, sometimes he'll shoot, but it's not really the key part of his game. So I liked covering Shake. He's a good guy. Was really a good guy to talk to in the locker room. But hope he enjoys Belgrade. I hope he got a nice little payday going over there, because it does seem last couple of years he's really struggled to find his level.
Well, he was a late second-round pick, so he got a pretty good career out of it. Made some decent money, a couple 2-year deals, got some good money in there, some guaranteed money. As Freddie Powell says, we always have that Shake Clipper game, man. That 39 that he hung on
crazy
Sunday afternoon in that game and dunked on Patrick Beverly, where nobody saw that one coming with the left hand.
Mom, what was there's a tweet I always remember. And I actually, at this point, I don't know if it's a real quote or not. I'm pretty sure it's not. But it's a quote of Paul George saying, "Help, damn it, help!" Guarding Shake Milton in that game. So yes, Shake will always have that game. He had some stretches where he
had multiple
awesome
stretches. And it seemed like he could play next to different types of point guards or guards, because it was Ben Simmons. He could play next to him because of the ball handling and the shooting, presumably, right? And Ben Simmons had heights. You can hide some stuff there. You can play him next to Maxey sometimes, where early on they're coming off the bench together, or he and Danny Green, where you can have them on the floor at the same time. So, yeah, man, I don't know where it went. The mechanics just went. The ball handling was always there. He could always handle the ball. Even at SMU, that was what he was known for, the ball handling and the shooting. That was going to translate to the NBA. It just wasn't consistent enough. And he was too good for the G League. He would destroy them, but he could never really find it in the NBA. But we always have that 39-point game against the Clippers. And help, damn it, from Paul George trying to slow down an unknown Shake Milton to the rest of the NBA. The scouting report wasn't there that game, man, because he went nuts against that Clipper team. But honestly, that Sunday afternoon.
One of those things, Devon, that shows you how tough it is to make it and stick in this league. Because
yes, it is.
He had a couple of like very solid. He's a 6-man type of guy in the league. Gets a decent amount of money, I think, to go to, what was it, Minnesota, I want to say.
Yes. Yeah.
And didn't work out there, bounced around, and now he's overseas. It is an unforgiving business. Can happen before you know it.
Kyle, I remember closing out that year. It was the same Clippers year, but it was also going into the bubble because of COVID, where I remember having shows of, does he need to stay in the starting lineup no matter who comes back healthy, because of those stretches that he had there, where he was just phenomenal. He had stretches. He had a month where he was just really, really good. And it wasn't that it was going to be one of those long-term stay in the starting lineup. It was for this particular iteration of the Sixers. Does he need to stay in the starting lineup? Figure it out next year. But right now, he's too damn good to be out of the rotation, and he might be too good to take out of the starting lineup. That's how good he was at that point.
Can't believe we talked this much about Shake Milton on a summer Friday, Devon, but here we go.
Shake Milton. Here we go, man. Here we go. So farewell to Shake. Good luck overseas, and we'll see what happens with Jaden Springer and where he ends up. All right, let's get to the world famous to close out the week. Roll call here on our PHLY Sixers show.
Look at that. Ethan is on it with the graphics,
On the money.
The transition. Money. He's crushing it today. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us. Not just today, but all week, as Devon, the bubble boy himself, has been holed up. Everybody send your get well soon cards. And
trying my best, everyone.
He's just cooped up. He's going stir crazy. Make sure that you send your love to our friend Devon, as I send my love to each and all of you, like mom's grandchildren. What's up to mom? Mom gets the first shout out this time. Probably deserves the first shout out every time, for that matter.
Can I give you two names real fast in the Jaden Springer draft? Immediately after him, pick number 30, Santi Aldama. And 35, if you remember, we talked about this guy for the last 2 years a ton, Herb Jones in the second round.
That's the big one. But he's one of those that at the time you said, this guy's never going to shoot, so who cares? But he was so good defensively that the rest of it had some time. Well, look at that. Mom getting shafted for Herb Jones and Santi Aldama. What a world we're living in, Devon.
I'll talk to her later.
I can tell you're going stir crazy.
Yeah.
Thank you to Money Mar, to Aaron, to Freddie Powell, to
what up, Aaron? What
Duck
up, Freddie?
Holiday, Hedfa, Phi Chi, Bootzilla,
Boots,
generational hater in the building. I don't know if I can't say whether you're actually a generational hater, but you claim to be. What's up to my girl Winona? What's up to Greeny Green? Theo was in here earlier, said I got to run, but wanted to make sure he got his shout out.
Very active in the chat.
Thank you to Colby Colbs. Thank you to Old Dirty Yams, to Marcus Blackstock, who was stuck in for a while and still managed to show up for his people. We appreciate that. Just like we appreciate all of you. Dave P, super active today. Who else?
Dave was active in the chat.
Yeah, the people who are here on a summer Friday, Devon, they're really here. We had someone named who came through, who must have seen yesterday's end of show, Devon, who said, Airbud has some dog in him. So Airbud has now made it into 2 consecutive PHLY Sixers shows.
Airbud watch party, man. We got to talk about Airbud on one of these shows, man.
We'll do it. Lost Sleep TV. We got INS. We got Will, Gavini, all our normal, Jay of the Jungle, all of our normal people.
Loved you in Men in Black. Loved you.
Thank you, all of you, for being here today and all week. Please, on the way out, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. And hit the thumbs up button to say get well soon, Devon and Derek. But also,
thank you, everybody.
Thank you to Ethan holding it down today in the producer's chair so that Bree can get a well-deserved Friday summer off. We will be back Monday at 3 p.m. as we are every single day, Monday through Friday. I won't be here the full week, but I'll be here to start it. We'll see who's going to come through for shows next week. Until then, enjoy your weekend. Stay out of this damn heat. Stay safe. We'll see you on Monday. Goodbye.
See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.